me on Facebook, and seeing as though ballots were actually mailed out to Oregon voters on Wednesday, I'm not surprised. We've been getting a lot of questions about the election, and that's where I want to start tonight with one of those questions. This one from a viewer named John from Hillsborough. He emailed and said, "You have the were there riots in Portland last night? That segment. Can you add a here's the count of ballots returned from our Metro Elections Office segment?" That's an excellent idea. Producer credit for John. Roll the stinger. So, what's the voter turnout so far? Brought to you by John. 13,299 in Multnomah County. So far, that's the only place where we're getting the numbers since it is so early, and some people haven't even really gotten their ballots yet, so if you haven't, don't get nervous. We'll be able to give you some statewide numbers, the turnout there, probably starting next week. But this is still pretty interesting, and I'll tell you why. We're 18 days out from the election right now, and more than 13,000 people in Multnomah County have returned their ballots. Now, 18 days before the 2016 election, for some reference, just a little bit more than 3,000 people had voted. That means 10,000 more people in Multnomah County have voted so far compared to just 4 years ago, which is a huge number. And it follows the same trends that we're seeing nationally, with a record 20 million early ballots being cast so far. And few people are paying closer attention to these numbers than the people trying to shift control in Portland City Hall. And that brings us to tonight's big story. The state of two races, of the biggest races, really, I think, in the city. There's the race for mayor, and then there's a race for a seat on city commission. The candidates, incumbent Mayor Ted Wheeler versus Sarah Iannarone, and incumbent City Commissioner Chloe Eudaly versus Mingus Mapps. Today, a new poll by OPB and DHM Research finds both races tighter than ever, and the challengers leading in both of them. OPB DHM finding Iannarone edging out Ted Wheeler right now by only 1 point, 34 to 33%, and Mapps beating Eudaly for the commissioner seat by a much wider margin, 9 points, 35 to 26. But I want to focus for a moment on the mayor's race for just a second, because you might think, look, 1 point, this is extremely close, separated by that small of a margin. But what if I told you it could still end up being a landslide because of them, the 6% of people who said that they are writing in either Teresa Rayford, the founder of Don't Shoot Portland, or the whopping 28% of people who said that they are still, at this point, undecided. 28%. Those are people who will very well decide the winner of this race and could swing it in a very big way. We're going to hear from both Wheeler and Iannarone in just a bit. But first, I kind of want to drive home just how remarkable it is to still have so many people undecided at this point in the game. And to put that into perspective, I talked to OPB's Jeff Mapes about their new poll.
Oftentimes at this point in the race, the argument is that, well, people have pretty much made up their mind, especially when there have been so many opportunities for both of these candidates to be in the limelight during major issues in the country and within this state and city. It is surprising to see such a large number of undecided voters. Can we credit anything for that? Well, why is that, do you think?
Well, I think part of it is that Sarah Iannarone is not as well known, and so I think there's still some questions about that. And I think, frankly, from the voters I talked to earlier this week, there is some uncertainty about whether they agree with her. You know, she is running considerably to the left of Ted Wheeler, and I think there are a fair number of voters out there who are not happy with particularly what's been happening in the last several months under the mayor's watch, but they're not sure she's an alternative that they can vote for.
So Wheeler and Iannarone, they have a really limited time at this point to convince the 28% of Portland voters to back them in the race. And this morning, there was another virtual debate between the two of them, led by Now This, and both were asked about policing. It's been a huge topic through all of this. First, they asked Mayor Wheeler if he thought he still had control of the Portland Police Bureau. We're going to play out his answer now in its entirety. Here it is.
PPB firmly under my control? No, because the way we currently have structured let me step back. The city charter assumes civilian oversight of the Portland Police Bureau, but the authority has actually been ceded to the Portland Police Bureau by former city councils through their collective bargaining agreements. The oversight and accountability mechanisms that currently exist do not put me as mayor or police commissioner in the driver's seat. In fact, what has happened previously is mayors have fired police officers, Chiefs have fired police officers, but because of the contract that was negotiated with the union, it then goes to arbitration, and almost uniformly arbitrators have found in favor of the officers. So we actually have officers who work for the police bureau who've been previously fired. So no, that level of oversight and accountability does not exist to the degree that people think it does. But in the areas that I do control, around taking people off the streets, around adding directives to the Portland Police Bureau in terms of standing up demilitarized options or investing in community, I have that control. And those are levers that I've pulled during my administration. I'm going to continue to use the tools I do have at my discretion as a weak mayor under a weak contract that cedes a lot of authority to the police union itself. But I think we're making progress in the right direction, and I'm not doing it alone. I'm doing it with all of my colleagues on the Portland City Council.
Now, the same questioner then asked Iannarone about how she and Commissioner Joanne Hardesty would handle the police department. See, both are very big critics of the Bureau. And while Portland's mayor traditionally leads the police bureau, Iannarone says that she would actually assign it to Hardesty if she wins. And that's a controversial choice to a lot of people. I mean, this summer, Hardesty had to apologize, if you remember, after she accused police of starting a fire themselves in their own union headquarters during a violent protest, which wasn't true. And with that in mind, Iannarone was asked during the morning's debate today whether she thought she and Hardesty could actually control the police, considering that rocky history. Listen here.
I believe that there are ways that even you can work. One, what we've seen is the current administration punting on a contract negotiation that was supposed to be happening now. They postponed it out until after the election. So just to make that clear, that could be in those contract negotiations now. But I do believe that we're actually doubling our power by having a non-mayor police commissioner and a mayor working in tandem. Right now, we have singular. We have the mayor who's also functioning as the police commissioner. Commissioner Hardesty is undeniably a force to be reckoned with. She brings a great deal of experience in this realm. I am unequivocal in my commitment to police reform, community safety, and racial justice. And then again, along with D.A. Schmidt, I believe that triumvirate of progressive reformers who are elected to reform progressively is going to be a formidable force for change in the next 4 years of Portland.
So, hey, 28% undecided people. Did you make up your mind? How'd we do? You know, a lot of people will decide based on, that topic, but there are a lot of issues right now that people are trying to decide upon. So if you're looking for some more feedback to kind of your thoughts, you can find all the coverage, everything we have done on the KGW YouTube channel. There are interviews from both candidates. We have them up right now. You can find them. I know a lot of you are probably going to be voting this weekend, so take the time, crack some wine, do some research, leaf through the voter's guide, and then get those ballots in. In both Oregon and Washington, you have until October 27th to safely mail in your ballot. After that, you should go ahead and drop it off at an official drop box by November 3rd, Election Day. Remember, no postage is required at all in either state. Hey, let's talk about a different type of poll now, a poll about how well Oregonians are handling coronavirus. The Oregon Health Authority partnered with the polling firm DHM Research to see how Oregonians are taking basic steps, really, to stay healthy. And you know what? We're doing pretty good. They found 84% of us wear a mask indoor in public areas all the time. 75% frequently wash their hands. And 51% of all Oregonians went to 3 or fewer social gatherings in the last 2 weeks. Now, one area where we could be better is contact tracing. See, the pollsters found a little less than 2/3 of Oregonians are very willing to be giving detailed information about their contact with other people to a contact tracer, which does help clamp down on things like workplace outbreaks. And we now know that there are more than 73 active workplace outbreaks in Oregon right now as I speak live on TV. Kristen Severance heard from some workers who say the proposed guidelines to keep them safe just aren't good enough.
We have a map on KGW.com of all of the active workplace outbreaks in Oregon right now. The largest is this blue circle, Snake River Correctional Institution. They have nearly 500 cases right now, but a lot of different businesses and industries are impacted. Some workers say the state and Oregon OSHA need to get these rules right to start bringing these outbreaks down.
So you don't want to say where you work, but what do you do? I am a checker at a grocery store.
Sarah Demerit calls working at a grocery store chain during COVID scary and stressful.
Well, I would say even at the very beginning, at first, they weren't sure what to do, so they wouldn't let us wear masks unless we had a doctor's note. And then they said we all had to wear a mask. And then it was a certain kind of mask. And then we couldn't wear the face shield. And we could wear the face shield with a doctor's note.
She said there's no consistency with cleaning either. At first, they clean the carts, checkout stand, and other areas all the time.
You know, cleaning the doorknobs and cleaning the cabinets and cleaning the handles, and now not so much.
She worries about getting COVID at work and bringing it home to her husband, a blind diabetic with underlying health conditions. And she can't afford to quit.
So it really scares me that I have to come to work. There's no real choice for me right now that I see to stay home. So I worry about taking it home to him every day. It seems like more people in the workplace are getting sick.
Oregon OSHA has received nearly 12,000 complaints since March. In a normal year, they get just over 2,000. There are 73 active workplace outbreaks in Oregon. That's more than 2,600 people with COVID right now linked to where they work, and 24 people have died. Oregon OSHA and the state have been working on guidelines all businesses must follow to keep workers safe. A draft released this week has minimum ventilation requirements, stricter mask and distancing rules, and requires employers to notify workers of a COVID exposure within 24 hours. The Oregon AFL-CIO is disappointed in the rules.
So one of the additional protections that would be really helpful is stronger ventilation requirements.
Political Director Jess Genatino Viatoro wanted stricter rules for keeping the air clean and circulating, although business groups have said it's too expensive to expect business owners to upgrade their HVAC systems right now.
No one wants to reopen the economy more than working Oregonians, and a key to reopening the economy is making sure that workplace transmissions are reduced.
We're in the front lines and we touch thousands of things every day. We get hundreds of people in front of us, and we'd like to see statewide rules that are very clear and concise right down the line for everybody.
You know, I asked Oregon OSHA about complaints that the rules aren't strong enough. A spokesman told me this is still in draft form and they are still working with stakeholders on the final version. That final version will be put out October 21st and go into effect November 1st.
Election security has never felt more important, and in Oregon and Washington, that means pressure's on for the Postal Service. That's why this photo on East Burnside has raised some questions. And you remember that big to-do about canceling daylight saving time? Is that still happening? The answer, when the story continues.
Welcome back to The Story. We're about to answer a viewer question, which is kind of our thing. If you have something you want to ask, we make it really easy. Take a look at the screen, grab your computer or your phone, email The Story at kgw.com. You can use Twitter. Just tweet using that hashtag #HeyDan. We'll find it. Or talk to me on Facebook. We're reading those comments as we speak right now. I got people for that. They're doing it as we speak. All right. Here is that question, by the way, from a viewer named Larry, who was asking about falling back this fall. He asked, "Hey, Dan, I'm confused on the upcoming daylight saving time change. I thought our elected officials voted for keeping daylight saving time permanently. So why the upcoming change?" Thank you, Larry, for that question. Yeah, Sunday, November 1st, so still a few weeks away, we got to turn those clocks back despite some attempts to stop that practice for good.
Daylight savings time. I mean, daylight saving time, I think. It's one of those. Either way, it's our annual annoying cue to spring forward or fall backward. Sunday, November 1st, we'll be gaining an hour and losing some sunshine in the evenings. But wait, didn't Oregon take care of this already? Don't we have some new law doing away with the time change? What's the deal? And how did we get here? In 1966, Congress passed the Uniform Time Act, establishing daylight saving time nationwide. Now, Oregon, slide dogs that we are, was already on board, having done the same thing 4 years prior. The idea to turn the clocks forward 1 hour on the last Sunday in April and turn them back on the last Sunday in October. Basically, it lets humans make better use of the daylight as the sun rises and sets later and later throughout the summer. Fun fact, the official time change actually happens at 2 a.m., but you're asleep and don't care. Anyway, in 2005, Congress extended the daylight saving time window, scheduling us to spring forward in March and fall back in November. Now, to be clear, through all of this, people have found these frequent shifts, well, annoying. Some states like Arizona, they don't observe daylight saving time at all, and last year, Oregon decided to take a page out of their book. But lawmakers, instead, passed a bill that keeps us on daylight saving time year-round. In other words, the schedule we use during the summer will become our schedule all throughout the year. And we're not alone here. Washington and California have passed bills and ballot measures to do the same exact thing. But, and this is key, none of us can actually make the switch yet. Because for that to happen, we measly West Coast dwellers need approval. You guessed it, from Congress and the president. In short, we're stuck in legislative limbo, waiting on D.C., and they're, of course, known for getting things done quickly. That was sarcasm, and that's how we got here.
Now, I know that a month kind of feels like 5 years nowadays, but I want to talk about something that we discussed about a month ago on The Story. Do you remember this?
How would you describe Portland? Rainy? Yeah. Quirky? Sure. Green? No, not that green. Green? All right. How about an anarchist jurisdiction? Because that's what the Justice Department says we are.
Sure, you remember that. The Rose City got this new nickname from the federal government because of the months of protests and the violence that we have seen here. Now, here's how it all took place, right? Here's what happened. First, the president issued this memo threatening to take away funding from state and local government that, quote, permit anarchy, violence, and destruction. And he specifically called out Portland and Seattle and New York. Then the Justice Department followed up by officially labeling those three cities as anarchist jurisdictions. In Portland, they cited protests and violence, and the city council cutting $15 million from the Portland Police Bureau. Attorney General Bill Barr wrote this. He said, "We cannot allow federal tax dollars to be wasted when the safety of the citizenry hangs in the balance." But it wasn't really clear what kind of funding they were talking about pulling, or if really it would happen at all, or if it was just a threat. But now it looks like the Trump administration is starting to follow through with what that memo said. Last week, the Federal Transportation Administration announced grants were available for public transit to help stop the spread of COVID-19, but it might not be available to everyone. The agency said they will, quote, review and consider applications for funding pursuant to this notice in accordance with the president's September 2nd, 2020 memorandum, you know, the one threatening Portland with taking that federal funding away. But it really, even all that said, it's not a sure thing that Portland won't get approved for this grant money. And of course, everything could change in a few weeks with the election as well. So we will keep you posted. Now, speaking of the election, a lot of you already have your ballots. And like we showed you at the top of the show, a lot of you have already started sending those ballots back in. Thank you for using that vote by mail, which makes it so easy. But some people in Portland got a little worried about mail security when they saw this. This was posted on the Portland subreddit a couple of days ago, showing what looks like a blue collection box that's broken. And we asked USPS about this, and they confirmed that 2 collection boxes were recently vandalized at 32nd and Burnside Riverside and Northeast 8th and Davis. But they say they are replacing them and investigating what happened. They don't know or haven't heard of any other collection boxes that have been damaged recently. By the way, just a little side note for anybody that thinks this might be a good gag to play. Damaging one of these can land you 3 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. So just keep that in mind, possibly. Now, if you are worried, though, about mail security for this election, you can track your ballot online to see if it has arrived at the elections office. You just go to the Oregon Secretary of State's website, click on My Vote, and then enter your information. You can also always put your ballot in an official drop box. Now, there's no right time to write us using that hashtag HeyDan. You could also email us at thestory@kgw.com, but now is probably one of the best times because in about 2.5 minutes, what you write could make it onto my phone and then onto your TV. I'll repeat it. Doesn't sound too dangerous, does it? And listen, there's no official competition here to be the story's #1 fan, but the viewer that sent me this picture has a pretty good head start. I'll explain why when we finish the story. Look, I already knew we had some of the most loyal viewers around, but Sarah Warren might be #1 fan, okay? She's in contention for sure. She posted this picture on my Facebook wall today and wrote, "We watch you every night, including on our honeymoon in Palm Springs. There's nothing more romantic than hearing me talk about remote learning. I already knew that. Congratulations on the wedding, first of all. That's amazing. Hope you enjoyed your trip. I hear it's a dry heat." Thank you for being a Dan fan, Sarah. Honestly, it makes me feel good. Thank you. It's so nice of you. Hey, got a couple questions. Dan Johnson. Hey, Dan, if I fail to vote on every candidate or issue on the ballot, will it be nullified? No, not at all. I mean, you can vote on one thing. You can vote on everything. In fact, one of the concerns right now is that there's so much attention being given to the presidential race and other big races in our area that sometimes some of those down ballot measures that are very important are kind of being overlooked. We're trying not to do that on the story, trying to remind people that, all this stuff is pretty important despite some of the massively important things that are kind of taking everybody's attention right now. Kristen wrote in and says, does more voters in Oregon give us more electoral college votes? No, it does not. That is set. And then John Kingerly. Hey, Dan, Washington County is part of the metro area. We deserve news coverage from the story in KGW, like voter turnout and COVID are examples. So today, when it came to voter turnout numbers, we gave that number, and we'll continue to do so as we approach the election. We could only get information from Multnomah County today. So again, we're going to be looking statewide in Oregon and up into our viewing area in Washington as well. We haven't forgotten about you guys, I promise. That's the story for this week. It is a Friday. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday. Until then, that's the story.